Namaste and welcome everyone. In my presentation, I am Yadu Gyawali, M.Phil English Education, second semester. I am doing this presentation for the task of translation studies, and today here I am going to present on applied translation studies on the basis of the essay written by Holmes on the name and nature of translation. My presentation includes the background information given in the essay. Similarly, there will be discussed some issues which are talked in the essay one. Similarly, as being the applied translation studies, what process we apply in case of doing translation. Then at the last, I will talk about the different dimensions of the translation studies in the application process. At the first, we know that translation is a separate discipline, and that is known in one of the training program to the translators whenever they need to do translation from one area to the other area, one language to another language. Especially there is high focus towards the interlanguage processes. In the sense, we can say that the translation is not only the process but also the product, and this is in terms of the act when we are performing some activities doing the translation act task in terms of developing our thoughts in the text and the context. While talking about the applied translation studies, the medium is the powerful part in the senses we can do the translation from the different modes, from the different mediums, like there may be only involvement of the human beings, so that is there is no involvement of the machines, and sometimes there might be use of the machines, and at the time and sometimes there might be use of both machine and human beings. In the cases in the essay, there is more focus towards four issues or four ideas in applied translation studies. As we know that applied translation is not the theoretical part, that is the part of the use of the translation activities. How can we use the activities? That's why it is known as the branch of the translation focusing towards the use of the translation works. For this, the first idea refers towards the translation is using for the teaching purposes. For the case of the teaching purposes, there is need of designing the curriculum and implementing that curriculum in terms of the different locations. And this is highly applicable in teaching of the foreign languages or the second languages. This means there might be existence of the first language. Like we can take the example whenever we are teaching English in Nepal, that we use the translation processes. By the senses, we can see that there is the development of the different methods, approaches of the language teaching. Like we can give the example of grammar translation method, and that was highly effective. That one, that's in case of the application field, translation is used in teaching. Similarly, translation works for the translator's training because translation has the system of the grammar, has the system of vocabulary, has different systems of the languages, and we are using the different languages, and languages have some universal features, though these universal features have been using in the different ways or the different structures, and a translator should know these different terminologies of the different fields, like they are the field based. Like for the case of the economic translation, we may have the different jargons of that level whenever we are doing some of the poetic transmission, and whenever we are doing the translation of any other types of the text, we have the different terminologies and we must be familiar with that. And that's why there needs the translator training, and this is in the field of the application. Similarly, a translator should get the training to the grammatical features, and this is in the application level. If the translator doesn't get the training of these different vocabulary items, grammatical items, and different contextual or the thematic items of the different fields, the translation might have the different meaning, or it may not provide the reality in their one. Next thing we need to discuss about the translation criticism, and that is related towards the translation evaluation or equivalence, because in case of the translation, there needs to be interaction between the source text and target text. There needs to be interaction between the translators and the producer. Here, producer means the source text generator. And next thing we need to consider about the evaluation of the translation that we talked. And similarly, we also have to think about the source and the target language relationship. Not only the language, but also there is the discourse as well as the context. We need to consider the most, but the very most important thing is the translation policy. In case of the translation policy, whenever we are applying this, how to apply in the field, how to use that one, and what are the different limitations of that one, then how and why. To answer these different questions, we need to set up the policy and the role of the translators, social infrastructure, medium of translation, socio-cultural situation need to be well determined by the policy. So if we cannot develop the policy of the translation, really we may have the problem of executing that on. In the sense is we have to develop the teaching process. We have to develop the concept inside of the translator's mind, and we need to think about the different evaluation processes, and we need to form the policy to apply the translation in the real field. In the cases is being the use of the translation in the real field, especially in case of the applied translation studies, there we focus towards the classroom activities, and beyond the classroom activities some translation tasks can be done, like some classroom tasks and some professional tasks. For that one, we need to follow some of the process of the translation. For this, there is input. Input is the source text, not only the text, but also context. We have to identify the text is developed in which context. Then we go towards the translation process. In the secondly, at first we know the input, then we go to the translation purpose. Then after translating this, we have to integrate the ideas. Source text to target, the source context to target context. That is for what means here we are evaluating this. This is talking about the translation equivalence. We are checking the quality, either that is equivalent or not. Like we translate one text, then that text gives the meaning of the source text or not. Is that meaningful or not? Like we have the different types of translations. What literal translation, formal translation, we have the different types of the translations one, but the translations will give the meaning, and that meaning need to be well determined or need to be checked. Then after we have to follow this step up to now, then after following this, then we can submit finally our translation task, and that is really applied in the field. And these all areas that we focus that translation is being the different discipline, is being the different criteria. This means what? That we talked about the different aspects, the descriptive aspects, theoretical aspects, and applied aspects. Especially we get the three aspects of the translations. In this aspect here, we are talking about the applied aspect only. By the senses, we can clarify that translation is that discipline which especially focus towards the subject specific knowledge one, and we have to apply that subject specific knowledge with the knowledge and the different dimensions of the translators one. So these dimensions like applied translation studies focus to the application of the translation in various fields. Implementation of translation issues or theories, yes, that we know. Like we should have the practical realization of these ideas. Yes, theory adaptation that we talk that translation is not only possible in the application fields. It has the descriptive role, it has the theoretical concept. By this descriptive role and theoretical concept, we put that towards the application level one. That's why adaptation of the theory is also very important part. Like medium variabilities, yes, the translation may be done by the different mediums, and we have to know these different mediums and their realities they want. Then translation need to be contextual as well as the meaningful. It should give the meaning of the context. Yes, so like the dimension, there might be translation that we talked about, the machine translation as well. So in the sense, we can say that translation is the part of bringing across, and that supports developing subject specific knowledge with the dimension of developing the areas, the context, the knowledge dimension, and different variabilities of the context of transferring the ideas from one to another one. That's why applied translation studies focus towards the use value of the translation, and it highly focus towards the developing of real real context in the field of the learning one. And I consult these sources, and thank you for your concentration here for my presentation, and I want to say bye for the time.